We're going to learn some vocabulary words this week that will be related to a story that we will be reading later on this week. All of the definitions in this presentation are taken from Merriam-Webster's Learner's Dictionary. So first we'll take a look at the standard that goes along with what we're doing, and that's our vocabulary standard. And what we're shooting for is to acquire and use accurately general, academic, and domain-specific words and phrases. And so for today, we're working in the developing area, which identifies definitions of vocabulary words, because knowing and understanding what the word means is important for reading and writing and just general communication, even listening and speaking, as far as understanding and getting your meaning across clearly. We will be working towards proficient, where you'll be able to explain the meaning of words and give examples, and working towards exceeds, where we use the vocabulary words in writing. So if you could take notes in some way as you watch this video so that you have access to the definitions of these words, that would be great. If you need to pause the video to get that, go ahead and do that. So here's our list of vocabulary words for this week. We will be looking at empathy, executive, collision, dejected, and fundamental. And I'd like you to pause the video right now and just think about where you've seen or heard these words before, and if you know any of them, what do you know their meaning to be? So our first word is empathy, and it is a noun. Empathy means the feeling that you understand and share another person's experiences or emotions. So, for example, he felt great empathy with the poor, or for the poor, or toward the poor. Any of those words would work with empathy. So in this context, that means that he understood what the poor were experiencing and the emotions they were feeling. So it's really the ability to share in someone else's feelings. So another example, his months spent researching prison life gave him greater empathy towards convicts. So he understood more what the other people were feeling. And one way to have empathy for someone is to go through a similar experience. So if you had a dog that you loved and that dog died, and then your friend went through the same experience, they had the dog that they loved and the dog died, you would have empathy for each other because you've been through a very similar experience. Not to say that the experiences are identical, but they're similar enough that you can understand each other's pain. And usually empathy refers to understanding the pain that someone has been going through, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. You can have empathy towards someone with positive feelings as well. Now, empathy can get confused with sympathy. Empathy means I understand or I feel what you're feeling. And sympathy more is, oh, I'm sorry that you're going through that. So there is a difference there. And so try not to get those confused. Our next word is executive. And an executive is a person who manages or directs other people in a company or organization. So basically, it's some kind of boss in a company or organization. So you might think of, oh, Mr. Town is my boss, Mrs. Wiersman's boss. We typically wouldn't use the word executive in that case, so it's usually more in a business setting. So like a sales executive or the television network's executives decided not to air the controversial show. Those are people in positions of power that make decisions, and they tell people in their organization what they need to do. We could use the word executive as in the executive branch of government, but for our purposes this week it's referring to a person who manages or directs other people. As you can see down towards the bottom of the screen, executive can also be used as an adjective, but we're just focusing on the noun definition this week. So here's a picture that might help you remember the word executive, so someone who's in the role of a boss in a company. So our next word is collision. So a collision is an act of colliding, which means a crash between two or more things. So it could be between things or between people when they hit each other. So the car was destroyed in the collision. That's the act of the two things hitting each other. You can also use with or between along with the word collision. So he was injured in a collision between a car and an SUV. Or she hurt her shoulder in a collision with another player. So you can use the word collision with those words. Collision can also be used more metaphorically, as in a situation in which people or groups disagree. So there's like a clash or a conflict between people. Like ideas are running into each other, crashing into each other can also be considered a collision. So here's a visual for the word collision, that idea of crashing into each other. Our next word is dejected. So the word dejected means sad because of failure or loss. So examples here, the dejected players left the field, and she's been so dejected since her sister moved away. So that's a deep feeling of sadness. Usually it's a stronger word to use than just sad. So after a sports team loses a big game, they might feel dejected. And our last word is fundamental. So the word fundamental can be an adjective, as you see on the left, and that means forming or relating to the most important part of something. So a good synonym for fundamental would be basic. It can also relate to the basic structure or function of something. So these ideas are of fundamental importance. You can also refer to a fundamental truth, concept, or belief. So describing something as very basic or important. Fundamental can also be used as a noun, and typically when it's used as a noun, it's plural, so fundamentals. So those are the basic and important parts of something. So reading, writing, and arithmetic are the fundamentals of education, the most basic part. Or the fundamentals of basketball might include like dribbling, passing the ball, shooting a basket. Those are the basic, most important parts. So you might think of the word fundamental or fundamentals as the building blocks, the necessary pieces to make something what it is. So let's just review the vocabulary words. As I go through them, I want you to think about what they mean. And if you want to pause the video so that you can kind of quiz yourself, that would be a good idea. So what does empathy mean? Empathy is understanding how someone else feels. It's not feeling bad for them, it's understanding their feelings. What does executive mean? An executive is a person who is in charge of people in a company. What does collision mean? It's the act of crashing into someone or something. How about dejected? Sad because of failure or loss. And fundamental, a basic important part of something. So those are the vocab words for the week. We should have practice opportunities posted on Canvas to use Quizlet or vocabulary.com to practice these words, and you will see them again coming up later this week.